Downstairs, the phone continued to ring. Are you going to get that? The phone stopped ringing. Stopping the search, she spun towards Stacey, irritated. Look, you tell me I shouldn't answer the phone because no one knows I exist, like they'd somehow recognize I'm not you from the other end of a phone, and then you just stand at the door like some kind of stunned, Yoo-hoo, Stacey, is something wrong? She walked over to wave her hand in the other girl's face. Stace, hey, it's me. Stacey? The door, she finally gasped. It moved by itself. Say what? The door. It moved by itself, Stacey replied more confidently. Huh? Her counterpart repeated. Look, I know I'm not real, but that doesn't mean I believe in fairy stories. No, I'm dead serious, Stacey replied. The door moved on its own. Chase stared at her in disbelief. She wanted to believe her counterpart was imagining things or playing a prank, but the freaked out look on her face was all too real. Besides, how could they hope to fool each other when they were, in effect, the same person? What do you mean the door moved by itself? Exactly what I said. I was turning to go out and answer the phone and the door just opened. But that's crazy, she protested. Don't you think I know that? Whoa, chill, girl. I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. I told you what's going on, Stacey replied. I went to open the door and instead it opened itself. Come on, seriously. How would that happen? Well, I don't know, do I? Stacey knew her voice was getting louder, but she couldn't help it. It was a symptom of the rising panic within her. As if it wasn't enough unfamiliar territory to have twin from an alternate universe sharing a bedroom. Now doors were opening themselves without visible explanation. Come sit down, Chase suggested, moving to the bed, shifting aside just enough so that Stacey could sit beside her. Now calm down and think it through. Tell me exactly what you think. Tell me exactly what you saw. After I suggested you keep searching, I went to go answer the phone. I stuck my hand out to turn the doorknob and what? The door opened by itself. The knob just sort of did a half turn to the left and popped open. Chase shook her head. She heard what Stacey was saying. She knew she wasn't lying, and yet she couldn't bring herself to believe it. Do you know what you were thinking at the time? Stacey nodded. I was thinking, I must go answer the phone. And because the door was closed, you would, of course, have to have opened the door, she said mostly to herself. It seemed ludicrous, but she had a strange idea she knew what was happening. Not that it made sense. Come on, let's try something, she told Stacey, hopping off the bed. Try what? Stacey asked, already beginning to calm down. Lock the door. What? What? Just trust me. We are the same person, after all. Reluctantly, Stacey locked her bedroom door. Now open it. Stacey shrugged, reaching open to unlock the door again. No, not that way. Huh? Unlock it the same way you did before. What same way? Don't touch it. Don't even reach for it. Just think about it. Trembling, Stacey concentrated, forming a picture in her head of herself unlocking the door. The lock clicked as the tumblers changed position. The door popped open like a jack-in-the-box after the handle had been cranked. How did I do that? Stacey wondered aloud. I don't know yet, her twin replied. Carefully she formed her own mental picture of reaching out and pushing the door closed. Instantly the door slammed shut, tumblers clicking into place as the door locked itself. But I think I did that. How? Stacey wondered, walking up to the door. She reached out and wrapped her hand around the knob, but it was stuck fast. It won't budge, she said, straining uselessly before turning to see Chase grinning wickedly. I know. Who do you think is holding it there? What is this, Tumbler Wars? Actually, I think it's telekinesis, Chase replied. You mean like witchcraft? No, I mean as in the power to move things just by thinking about them. It's scientific theory that we only use about 10% of our available brain power, that if we could somehow use 100% of our mental capacity, we'd be practically psychic and have all these super cool powers. Maybe because you and I are both here at the same time, we're somehow sharing our mental energy, giving us these abilities. Chase's theory sounded plausible, but it didn't make what was happening any less strange. Can we stop it? I doubt it, since we don't even know where it started. Besides, why would you want to? It's kind of cool. Yes, it was that, Stacey thought to herself. She just wasn't sure how long they could keep their secret if they couldn't control this new ability. What should we do? I don't know about you, but I think we should go to the park and find out just what we can do. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, going out in public and all? Why not? Chase replied reasonably. As if in agreement with her, the bedroom door swung open. 5 minutes later, the two of them stood in an open green field. Although it was only late afternoon and the sun was still high in the sky, the park was mostly deserted. The playground, which was only 10 or 15 feet from their location, underneath the shade of some trees, was bare and deserted, the wooden horse swaying gently only because a mild breeze caused it to do so. The two of them had brought several items each, including a beach ball and a stack of books, which they placed on the ground. So what's the exercise? Chase screamed, and the ball levitated into her outstretched hand. First, get this ball off me. Okay, fine, Stacey replied, leaping forward to grab it. Chase turned, hugging the ball to her chest and causing Stacey to face first into her back. Undeterred, Stacey made another grab for the ball. Not like that, Chase snapped harshly. The other way. Oh, yeah, right. Stacey stepped back. Instead of actually making a grab for the ball, she imagined herself taking the ball from Chase. As she did so, it slipped from Chase's grasp, hanging gently in the air for a moment before floating towards her. A split second later, the ball appeared to change its mind and hovered back to Chase. Before it reached her, however, it changed direction once more and headed for Stacey. Just as it looked as if Stacey would gain the ball after all, it appeared to change its mind once more and hovered back towards Chase. No fair, Stacey exclaimed, as she felt Chase's mind fighting for the ball. You told me to grab it. I told you to try, Chase corrected. Stacey shrugged. Look, a bird! As Chase turned to look behind her, her concentration slipped, allowing Stacey to once more gain the upper hand. The ball turned in midair and leapt into her hand. Gotcha. Now look who's not being fair. Stacey stuck her tongue out. Oh, how mature. Without warning, 3 books jumped into the air and hurled themselves at Chase, forcing her to shield herself. I think we'd better go, she said after the barrage was over. It's getting late. The sky had indeed darkened considerably since their arrival, and there was barely any light left, save for a few fading rays from the sun and a handful of visible stars. You're just mad because I'm better than you are, Stacey retorted. Chase rolled her eyes. As Stacey bent over to pick up the offending books, the beach ball leapt into the air and bumped her squarely in the backside, causing her to lose her balance and fall forward. These doppelgangers, would they have, say, any special powers? Huh? Abigail asked distractedly. Would doppelgangers, if they existed, have any special powers? Are you still on about that? She said irritably. I told you, they don't really exist. I know that, Stacey replied. I was just wondering, if they did, would they have any special powers? Like what, for instance? Stacey pretended to think. She knew it was dangerous to quiz someone as perceptive as Abigail in this way, but she couldn't help herself. Besides, as long as she believed they were talking hypothetically, there was no real danger that her friend would discover the truth. Like what, friends? Like, for instance, telekinesis. Huh, what? The ability to move things just by thinking about it. I know what it means, Abigail replied, sounding insulted. Where would you get an idea like that? It's a hypothetical, remember? Stacey reminded her. Abigail rolled her eyes. Obviously. Is it possible? Well, science says we only use about 10% of our... Stacey, this is getting ridiculous. Your doppelganger would be no more or less human than you are. If she did exist, and it's a pretty big if, she would be as ordinary as you and me. So it's not possible then. Abigail stared thoughtfully at the cheese and ham sandwich in her hand before taking a bite. Sorry. She considered Stacey's question as she chewed, then swallowed and said, "My money's on no, but since we're talking non-real scenario here, I suppose you can imagine her with whatever attributes you like." Stacey chewed and swallowed a bite of her own salad mayo sandwich. She wished she could tell her friend what was really going on, but she wasn't sure she could even believe it herself, and Chase had been sleeping on her bedroom floor for the last week already. Every time she went to sleep, she imagined herself waking up from a dream, and every single time she awoke to find her doppelganger still lying there under the moth-eaten quilt she had pulled from one of their storage boxes, her golden hair spread out upon the spare pillow from her own bed. Not that it hadn't been a hard few days keeping the secret from her own mother, managing to conceal Chase's presence at the last second before Mum entered her room, just enough to convince her that someone was there, without giving away who. Twice now she'd come home to find Mum going through her belongings, while Chase hid in the closet, barely breathing. She'd had no idea what she was searching for, but she knew her mother suspected something, because she kept talking about boyfriends and relationships, reminding Stacey that boys took a lot longer to mature than girls, and not to come across too easy. "Why are you so curious, anyway?" Stacey snapped out of her daydream. "What do you mean? I mean, why are you so concerned with what another you in a parallel universe might be like?" Abigail asked, regarding her carefully. Stacey shrugged. "I guess I'm just curious. I'm interested in science and stuff." "No freaking way," Abigail snorted. "I'm not buying what you're selling." "What do you mean?" Stacey asked innocently. "Your test scores are the lowest in class. You hardly ever pay attention. Last week during the biology pop quiz, you said photosynthesis was something to do with photocopiers." "Oh yeah," Stacey murmured, remembering. She'd had a bad feeling that if she didn't drop this subject soon, Abigail was certain to figure out the truth. If that happened, it would only be a matter of time before her mother discovered it too, as well as anyone else she knew. "So how did you go with the math homework?" Abigail raised her eyebrows quizzically, as if to say, "Is that the best you've got?" All of a sudden, Stacey found herself feeling really small. Maths class that afternoon was taken by a substitute, a bald and grey-haired man with a pot belly and wire-rimmed glasses on his large nose. He stood at the front of the room, writing on the blackboard while explaining some enormously complex mathematical equations in words that hurt Stacey's head. She and Abigail started towards the back of the room, their view obscured by half a dozen of their classmates, although it didn't really matter because neither one of them was exactly paying attention. Abigail was flipping through her textbook, her expression flickering between pleased and disappointed as she checked and rechecked last night's homework assignment, while Stacey was doing what she usually did during maths class, daydreaming. She was fixated on her hunky classmate, imagining them both 10 years from now, having long since graduated on the day of their wedding. He was standing at the end of the church aisle in a black suit and bow tie, his best man at his side, grinning his killer grin as he watched her come towards him. She was wearing a simple off-the-shoulder wedding gown with a long train, stepping carefully in her white high heels. As she approached him, he took her hand, and they both mouthed the words, "I love you," to each other as the priest began the ceremony. They stood there hand in hand in complete silence until he asked them to recite their vows. He began first, though it was less the traditional vows of fidelity and more of a love poem, her heart welling up with each syllable as her eyes began to tear. He finished with a simple, silent "I love you," and the priest indicated that it was her turn. She cleared her throat, which had gone dry during his poetry. Slap! Yanked from her daydream, Stacey's heart sank as she found herself once again in maths class. 3 rows ahead of her she could see Christopher, chatting to the boy beside him. Like everyone else in the class, he was completely oblivious to what had happened. though it was her staring at him which had prompted her daydream. Looking below her desk, she saw that the intrusion had been caused by her textbook, which had been inadvertently knocked off her desk while which she had inadvertently knocked off her desk while wrapped up in her daydream, in her fantasy. Quickly checking that no one was paying attention to her, not even Abigail, who was busily trying to solve the teacher's seemingly ludicrous equation, she returned her attention to the book. She pictured herself reaching out, wrapping her fingers around it and lifting it from the floor. The book didn't move. Stacey blinked in confusion. Yesterday it had come effortlessly, almost as if the objects were indeed moving all by themselves. Now, if inanimate objects could be endowed with personalities and behaviors, she would have assumed that her textbook was deliberately ignoring her. Clearing her head, she visualized retrieving the book in every minute detail. Still nothing happened. Stacey growled in frustration. This is ridiculous. What? Nothing. Glaring frustratedly at the defiant book, she reached out to grab it. Her chair, already slightly wobbly because one of its legs was a bit short, slipped from under her, causing her to smack her head against the desk on her way to the floor. The classroom erupted in laughter. Stacey, are you all right? Abigail asked, reaching down to help her up. Accepting her friend's assistance, Stacey said nothing, though she reserved an especially frosty glare for her stubborn textbook. If only it had responded to her the way it was supposed to, she would not have been in such a humiliating position. Unlocking the front door, Stacey headed directly for her bedroom and slammed the door behind her. Chase, she whispered. Chase, are you in here? The room around her was the same mess it always was, though now there was a moth-eaten doona stuffed in the corner which usually went unnoticed by her mother, even when she had occasion to enter. But Chase was nowhere to be seen. Chase, where are you? Stacey repeated, trying to control the stress in her voice, lest her mother should hear her calling someone else's name. It was bad enough that Mum thought she had a boy in her room, let alone what might happen if she came up here and discovered the actual truth. At that last thought, Stacey's heart stopped. Had her mother found Chase? The closet door swung open, and the girl in question emerged into daylight. Her clothes, a t-shirt and track pants she had borrowed from Stacey, were dishevelled. Her hair, although it was presently tied into a ponytail, was knotted and messy. Hi, Stacey, she said tiredly. Relieved, Stacey flopped down on the bed. Bad day? Terrible, Stacey muttered into her pillow. What happened? Chase asked sympathetically, sitting down beside her. I was daydreaming in maths class and knocked my book off my desk. When I tried to pick it up, I bumped my head on the desk and fell on my butt. Ouch. That's not the worst part, though. Oh? I tried to pick it up, though. You know, she lowered her voice even further. You know, the other way. But it didn't work. What happened to you? She asked, noticing Chase's look for the first time. Mum came in, she replied. Your mum. Our mum. Melissa came in and I couldn't stop her. I tried to lock the door, but I didn't get there in time. She came in and I had to pretend to be you. You're in trouble for wagging school, by the way. Why were you in the closet? Stacey asked curiously. She ordered you, to school around 9:30. I was hiding in the closet in case it was her, so she thought I was still coming home. She won't be home for hours. She's doing after school care for the primaries all week, until she gets a proper teaching job. You didn't seem so surprised when I said I couldn't levitate my book, she said suspiciously. What do you know? That was why your mum caught me. I was lying on your bed and I tried to close the door telekinetically. By the time I realized it wasn't working, she was already here. Do you think we imagined it? Are we imagining each other? Maybe it was a glitch, Stacey suggested, like a fault of some kind. There's only one way to find out. The pillow rose off Stacey's bed unseen, carefully made its way behind her, and "Hey, that's not fair!" she exclaimed. "Yes, it is," Chase replied. "Come and get me." Another pillow rose from the bed, smacking Chase across the face, as though challenging her to a duel. "If that's how you want to play it," she responded. The first pillow came after Stacey. This time, however, she was prepared enough to duck out of the way. Instead, the flying pillow caught Chase head on, knocking her into the wall. The second pillow followed, bonking her swiftly as she tried to get to her feet. The first pillow came up behind Stacey, wrapping her on the ankles, causing her to fall on her butt. "That's the second time today," she growled. The second pillow clouted Chase in response, so that she was flung into the opposite wall. "Stacey, are you home yet?" The two pillows went instantly limp and fell to the floor. "I thought you said she wouldn't be home for hours," Chase whispered. "I did," Stacey replied in an equally low voice. "Then you'd better go downstairs and find out what she wants before she realizes one of us isn't meant to be here." Stacey nodded and hurried downstairs, the door closing itself behind her. I hope you've enjoyed today's chapter, and I hope you're looking forward to next week's. I'm sorry these haven't been as regular as I promised, but, well, things got in the way. I hope you'll join me next week, or at least next time, and I hope you're enjoying what's been shown so far.